Hello and welcome to Who Are You, the Bobcats You Know, the Stories You Don't. I'm your host, Joel Vanner, inside the podcast studio at Quinnipiac University School of Communications. And I'm joined today by my guest, Ari Perez. Ari, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you, Joel.
And I know you're a podcast professional. We'll get into your podcasting experience in a little bit, but I'm happy you're here.
Thank you.
As a guest on the show. Ari, my first question to every guest is the same, and that is, tell me, who are you?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about this. You know, it is nice that I had some time to prepare.
It is a deep question.
Yeah, it is. And you can go so many ways. So I thought really about what is important to me. And I don't know that I have a cohesive answer. I just came up with a bunch of words. So I'm just a guy from Honduras. I grew up in Honduras and then I lived in France for a little bit. I moved to the United States in 2007 to go to grad school. I went to a big school in the South that I love. And then I became a Bobcat in 2014 to start the new School of Engineering and Computing, or Computing and Engineering as it's actually called, here at QU. And I have a kid who is 6 years old and awesome, and his name is Ray, and I love him. That was also important for me. And I am a big Swiftie. That's also important.
And in our School of Computing and Engineering here at Quinnipiac, you're an associate professor of civil engineering.
Yes, sir. So I've been a professor here of civil engineering for the last 12 years. I came in to start the program. I do geotechnical engineering, which is soils engineering. And I am super proud of this. This is actually one of my proudest academic achievements. I have also adjuncted on the side for the College of Arts and Sciences in the Women and Gender Studies department.
And we'll unpack your Quinnipiac experience. But first, Ari, I want to start with Ari growing up. You mentioned France, Honduras. Tell me about Ari growing up. Where are we? Where do we start? And what were you interested in?
Yeah, for sure. So I was actually born in the U.S. in Miami, and then I grew up in Honduras with my mama and my grandparents. So in a town called San Pedro Sula, and then a little bit in Tegucigalpa, which is the capital. And I just really liked Lego, like a lot of kids, like my own kid.
I like Lego now. I build all the botanicals.
Right, it's great. I'm a little bit upset about the Pokemon price being so high because I really wanted an Eevee, and that's
expensive.
Yeah, and like the 3 starters, it's like $650 anyways. So I really loved Lego. I really liked that. I really liked history and kind of like architectural history and monumental architecture and kind of big material kind of like pieces of culture from distant past. Then in the mid-90s, my mama, who was a doctor, went to France to get her specialty. And so I lived there where we met my stepfather. And I really just developed an interest again for like ancient Rome, and like everything to me that attracted me was the history and the culture behind it. But like it was really the tactical representation, like the temples, the castles, everything that I could touch.
And there's a lot probably to explore in France too.
Yeah.
Culture shock, but also a lot around you and your environment.
Yeah, and just a totally different way of living and, you know, new language. French is my second language after Spanish, and I have so many fond memories. And I hold French citizenship now, and so I was really able to become culturally fluent in French and French culture and French history. My stepfather was a French history teacher, so I did that up until about early high school, and then at about that time, my mama and my stepfather and I moved back to Honduras, where I finished my high school. I graduated a little young at 14. And then I decided to go to university. That was pretty clear to me. But it was a little weird because I was young and I just didn't have any good idea as to what I wanted to do.
Right. You mentioned you graduated high school when you were 14. Something we talk about on this show with other guests is sometimes deciding a college major when you're 16, 17, 18, whatever age you enter college. That's a lot to understand. What do I want to do for the next 4 years, 6 years, 3+1, you know, whatever it is. But at 14, how did you kind of uncover maybe where you wanted to start and go in school? That must have been a bigger decision.
Yeah.
A big decision.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And in hindsight, I really lucked out. I like to say that I lucked out 3 times in my professional career, kind of just landing in the right fields.
Did you pick engineering? Was that the field?
I did. And the way I did it is like I was 14, I was registering for university. Uni is a little different back home. So there is no such thing as an undeclared major. You have to pick something, and you can always change it, but you have to say something. And I remember being 14, 15, standing in line with my grandmother to register. And like, you know, there's 3 people ahead of me and I'm like, what am I going to say? And then there's 2 people ahead of me and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? And there's 1 person in front of me. I'm like, well, I have to pick something. And it was really an engineering field because of like socioeconomic conditions in Honduras. I wanted something that had like a nice professional path and like something that I would have a very clear path on how to build a profession, a career, and all of that stuff. And it was really between software engineering, and I really thought I was going to do that. But something like kind of stuck at me in the back of my head. And so when it finally became my turn and the person said, "Hey, what do you want to be for the rest of your life?" I blanked out a little bit. And then I was like, and my first thought was like, well, I love building Lego as a kid. Civil engineering is just Lego on a bigger scale. And so I said, civil engineering. And they wrote it down and I started taking classes. In my first year and a half, I just kept having this like feeling, man, I should really go to the registrar and like change because I actually want to be a software engineer. But I never got around to it. And then inertia just kind of took over and I ended up taking a civil engineering class, even though I thought I was not going to be into it.
Just stayed the course and went through it.
And then I really loved civil engineering and I really became like enamored with the field and its flexibility, its depth, its history. Like civil engineers are some of the very first engineers that we have. And again, kind of like my fascination with history and antiquity, like I love that my profession and my field, like I can trace it back to like Romans. There are Roman civil engineers whose names I know and like I can be like, yo, Fulvius did that thing. And that's the same feeling that I get when I, point out to my mom, hey, I built that. And I love that.
Right. And as you're explaining the field of civil engineering, you're talking with such passion, which translates into your courses, and we'll get into how that informs your teaching. But actually, when did academics become a spot on your radar that you said, hey, I actually want to teach this to students? How did that journey unfold for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I said I had 3 strokes of luck and teaching was the third one. So the first one, civil engineering, I didn't think I was going to be into it. Love it. So very lucky. Then when I went to grad school, I had to pick a branch of civil engineering. Didn't have any idea as to what I wanted to do. I thought I would kind of work on bridges. But I enrolled in soils and I was like, soils, how bad can that be? Love it. Like passion of my life, second stroke of luck. And then I came in without funding attached to research, which is a non-standard way of coming in. But because of the transition from Honduras to here, that's what happened. And my second semester, my advisor came up to me and offered me a teaching position. So I could afford the luxuries in life, like rent, food, fuel.
The basics.
Yeah, you just, the stuff that I really wanted. And my family has a lot of teachers in it. And I never thought I would be one. Like my stepfather was a history teacher. My grandfather, I call him my dad, he was like a teacher too. And I have so many aunts and uncles. But, I needed money. And so I started teaching. And once I started teaching, I was like, oh no, I like this. Like, this is fun. Like, I really love building relationships with the students and getting to know them and really sharing my knowledge of civil engineering and of souls. And so I just kept at it. And that's how it became my career.
And you mentioned in your introduction, you played an integral part in forming the School of Computing and Engineering here at Quinnipiac. What was your journey to Quinnipiac like? Was it a place you heard of and had an interest in? Was it just you saw, this may be an interesting opportunity? How did Quinnipiac come to be?
Yeah. So, I was on the job market end of 2013. And when you go to graduate school, especially at like large research universities like I did, most of the focus is on your productivity as a scholar and as a researcher. That is kind of the stat that people really care about. And then teaching only becomes the side thing that you do so that you can get to your research. And I like research. I like my research, but like it's not what animates me. What I really love is spending time in the classroom in front of students. And so when I started looking at jobs, I really looked at teaching places. I was like, I don't want to be, writing grants in the lab. Like, I love that for people who love that, but that's not for me.
Right.
And I had never heard of QU, but at the time they had a job posting and the job posting just looked like a perfect fit for me. They're saying, hey, we're building a new school from scratch. It's going to be teacher focused. It's going to be, teaching focused, student centered. We're here to like really share our love of engineering. Like there are obviously research expectations, but you will be assessed on how good your classes are, which I thought would be good for me. And it just seemed like such a wonderful opportunity that I was very excited to apply, even though my first thought is like the poll, because I like politics, so I knew of the poll.
Yeah,
and so then I Googled Quinnipiac poll, and then like eventually it happened.
Connected but separate.
Yeah. It's funny too, because like this might be my memory bleeding, but either right before I came or right after I came, Marcom put out like an ad that was saying how to say Quinnipiac, and like it was a lot of people saying Quinnipiac wrong. Like it's not Quinnipiac or like whatever,
It's Quinnipiac.
Right.
Yes.
It's Quinnipiac. It's not Quinnipiac. And so like, I just remember seeing that and I'm like, okay, so I'm not alone that this is a place that I am unaware of.
But it was probably well timed because then
Yeah.
you understood the right
Yeah.
pronunciation.
And then, I applied. I had a wonderful phone interview. At the time, there was only one more civil engineer here. And so they let me know how everything was. I was lucky enough to be selected for an on-campus interview. I interviewed on my mama's birthday because I thought that would bring me luck.
Lucky day.
Yeah. And then the campus, it had just snowed. It was like a snowball. You know how like the quad here just looks like a little snow globe every so often. It was perfect. And man, like I just remember what a wonderful day. It was one of those times where like you show up and there's an opportunity and everything just looks like it's clicking. I had a good sense. I was like, I think they like me. Like, I love this place. I was so excited to come here. And I went home and obviously they went through the interview process. And a couple months later, when they called me to offer me a job, I was eating pancakes at IHOP. And I can remember everything. I was just so excited to come here and really land in a place that where the things that I thought were valuable and interesting and worth pursuing were valued and were the goal.
So you've worked to build the civil engineering program as the other programs in the School of Computing and Engineering have been growing and building as well. Tell me about the scale and scope of civil engineering here at Quinnipiac. What is it? What can students expect? And what kinds of opportunities are in the program?
Yeah, for sure. So to start with, just kind of like the 30-second overview of civil engineering. Civil engineering is the field that takes nature as is and works to adapt it for human welfare and human well-being. And so that means mostly building stuff, but it doesn't mean necessarily just building stuff. So the fact that you can open the spigot and drink the water because you know it's good to drink, that's a civil engineer who did that, and who built the pipes, and who built the pipe network, and who then, when you flush the toilet, they take care of that so they can be, put safely back in the river, so on and so on and so on. Here at QU, we have a program that really emphasizes the basics of civil engineering and really gives you an idea of like the breadth of all the jobs you can do. One of my favorite things about the field is there are so many opportunities that you can kind of pick how you want to work. You can work in an office 40 hours a week in a cubicle and just do design of concrete beams and never see anybody else. Or you can be out hiking the fields in the mountains for like 38 hours a week, just 2 hours in the office filling reports because you're taking water samples for environmental engineers. You can work with people as a town engineer. You can, like the community at large, you can just work in design teams. You can work as the engineer on field, whatever you want. And so a lot of our students that come here, after their 4 years, they move on to jobs as project managers, construction managers, structural engineers and designers. So the folks that like make and build bridges and design them and make sure they're safe, safety consultants, and just everything that is related to the build world as we know it, that's a job for a civil engineer.
And the class sizes, we'll get into that and the benefits that those present. But the way the classes are allow you to connect individually with each student to unlock what they're interested in and customize courses and how you teach to what they're interested in, right?
Yeah, 100%. We have a small program. I get to know all of my students so well. Like I get to know them, their hometowns, what they like, what teams they don't like. And so I'll wear special jerseys and like sometimes I'll put on my Real Madrid jersey in the morning and I'll be like, man, so-and-so who's a Barcelona fan is going to give me like a comment in class. So I should think of something to say back to like fake name, obviously, but like Natalie, because like, I know she's a Barcelona fan. And I just love having that relationship. Like you say, our classes are maxed out at 24 students per class. So I always have time to like mostly talk with all my students and make a connection. Like if you come to my class, it is 95% more likely we'll swap something during class. Like I might ask you a question about concrete, or I might ask you a question about soul, or, just like, hey man, can you help me out with this calculation as we solve a problem? But to really keep that like human link between me and my students and to get that sense that like, they're not just random folks. They're like people that I really like and enjoy company. And like, we have things we talk about. And what I love here is that we have such a nice group of students that whatever I want to chat about, I can chat about it with somebody. So this current semester, I've gotten obsessed with Love Island. I have never seen Love Island in my life. 3 weeks ago, I started. It's the only thing I can think of. And so I got into class like 5 minutes earlier and I was like, okay, who here has seen Love Island? Because like, I need to talk about it. And that'll be great. And then Champions League is the next day. And I'll be like, all right, y'all, we need to talk about Champions League. And I just love having such good relationships with my students.
It helps you co-build the classroom with your students to make that learning environment a learning and relatable environment. You mentioned Love Island. I don't know, maybe you'll develop and teach a class about Love Island, but you have taught a class about Taylor Swift. tell me about the class and then kind of what that means for you to be able to be here at Quinnipiac and explore that area of interest for you.
Yeah. So like I say, because, this is a women and gender studies class on Taylor Swift, who is one of my heroes. And like, I really love her work and everything. And it is one of the things, if not the thing I am the proudest about academically, because it's like so far from my home base. And it's really a passion project. And, I've actually been able to tell the story about how the class got around on my podcast and on interviews. And I feel it is such a wonderful story to illustrate the QU community, because I've never worked at another place, so I can't sit here and be like, it would have never happened at another place. But like, I don't know if
happened at another place.
It would have never happened at another place. You. Thank you. Like, faculty here, like, they're very friendly, most of them. And like, a lot of us want to collaborate and we're interested and we're all just have a passion for teaching. And so it ended up, I'll just tell you the story so short because like it couldn't have happened anywhere else. But the director of the Women and Gender Studies program is a friend of mine, like personal. We have kids that are around the same age, so we hang out. And every time there was a class on Taylor Swift, like at Harvard or at NYU, I would send her like a little note and be like, hey, Kim, that's her actual name. We really need to get a class here at QU. And eventually she was like, hey man, like if you want it, you can teach it. And I was like, thank you, I will. And after the like rush of excitement, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to talk about in this class? Like, we have very set academic standards. Like, I can't just show up and like gush about, oh my God, I love Taylor Swift so much. Like, I have to actually teach these kids things. And as I started thinking about it, I just realized that I could really rely on the network of expertise and all of my wonderful colleagues here at QU. And so what ended up happening is I divided the class into 13 modules, each one looking at Taylor Swift's work from a specific academic discipline lens. And so
like market,
like business and leadership, right? And so I had Professor Julia Fulig-Jagela, who is the chair of management, come in and share her expertise with that. Women and gender studies, Professor Kim O'Neill came here and did that. Even looking at like mental health and how people will always joke like, Taylor Swift is my therapist and she keeps me sane. And so I had Professor Clorinda Vélez come in and like talk about this and help us look at the literature and explain and just draw from their expertise. And I put out 13, I think, really wonderful episodes with 13 really wonderful faculty that really allowed me to explore all the nooks and crannies. And I always thought of it as a partnership. I know so much about Taylor. You know so much about sports journalism. Sure. Like, let's meet in the middle and let's have like a really nice discussion about it. And yeah, I don't know that it could have happened anywhere else but here.
So Taylor Swift aside, back to civil engineering. What advice would you give to students who are looking to decide on a field of engineering and maybe even civil engineering?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing I would say is there is this impression that engineering fields are very difficult and rigorous and take a lot of work and you have to be real smart to get in. And that is true, but that is true of everything. Like a lot of college degrees, almost all of them are like hard and you have to be into it. And so like, I don't think getting a degree in engineering is objectively at the end any more difficult than getting a degree in most anything else because they will all be difficult. It's just in their different ways. And the example that I always think of this, people are a little afraid of math and they think math is really difficult. But if you ask most of my students, would you rather solve an integral or would you rather go on stage in front of 30 people and tell a joke? Almost to a person, they will all solve the integral because like it feels very awkward to go out there and be a performer. And so when they choose the integral, I'm like, so who are you to tell me the integral is easier? It's just a different flavor of difficult, and you're going to go to the thing you're strong. And so, is engineering difficult? Of course, but so is everything. And so if you're interested in it, regardless whether you think you have it or not, most everybody has it. It's just a matter of work. And the other thing is what I just said, like anything else is just about being motivated and wanting it and being interested in it and finding pleasure in it. Like, anything that you work, we all fantasize about the jobs we'd love to have. I had once an advisee tell me, do you know who Stephen A. Smith is? I'm like the sports journalist? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I would rather have his job than to be an engineer. And I'm sitting behind the desk. I'm like, well, yeah, if I could have Stephen A. Smith's job, like I would rather have that job too. But like,
maybe Stephen A. Smith wants to be an engineer.
Correct. And like, there's only so many of those jobs, right? And like, good for you, pursue your passion. But like, I am passionate just about engineering at whatever level. And so that's what makes me good for an engineering field. I don't just want the fancy top engineer level. Like, I just like all of it, right? And I think if people are interested in there, it's just a remembrance that like, it's like going to the gym or like going on a hike. Like it's tough. You have to put in work. There's like no other way around it. But if you're a person that's gone to the gym for a year, the weights that were super heavy month 1, month 12, you're just like swinging them around. You're not even looking at them because you've gotten better. And if you're interested in engineering and this is what you think, I can make a difference in the world, I can really help my community, I can really, make a very tangible difference in people's lives, then please come into the field. We really need you. And everything else is just a matter of work. It's just, doing the math and getting through all of that. And that work will be anywhere you go.
And when you graduate, you can take it into a whole bunch of different avenues that you may want to take it into. You mentioned a couple when you were describing the field. You can go into environmental, you can work in an office setting, you can do a mix of both, really anywhere you want to go. And the alumni graduating from the program speak to that and the versatility when students graduate here from Quinnipiac.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I think an engineering degree, is just such a wonderful degree in the options that it opens up for you. And, it's not for everybody because some people just aren't interested in it, and that's okay. There's so much good stuff out there to pick from. But for folks who are interested in how things work, I just think it's such a good degree and path to open up thinking and creativity. One of the stories that I always tell is there's this Calvin and Hobbes strip about determining the maximum load on the bridge. So Calvin and his dad are driving on the bridge, and there's a 10-ton maximum sign, and Calvin asks his dad, how do they know that? And as a kid,
they know that?
Right. And as a kid, I was tortured by this question. And when I saw the comic strip, my first thought was oh my God, thank you. Somebody finally is asking the question I've been dying to know. And then the dad says, well, you see, they build a bridge, and then they drive a 1-ton truck over it. And if the bridge holds up, they drive a 2-ton truck over it. And then if the bridge holds up, 3-ton, 4-ton, up until the bridge falls down. Then they rebuild the bridge, they weigh the last truck, and that's how they get the sign.
And then they put the sign up.
Right. And as a kid, I knew two things. I knew, well, that's not it.
Right.
But I didn't know, that can't be it. There has to be another way. But what is it? And it's not until I became an engineer that the way of thinking, the kind of recontextualization happened. It was oh no, they don't build the bridge and figure out the weight. They decide the weight, and then they go yo, what kind of bridge can we build so that sign is then true? And that's the way to think about it. And I think there are so many of these aha moments of how the world works, of how people organize themselves, and how our environment changes our society in ways both tangible and intangible. Just the ways we think that you learn doing civil engineering, that's incomparable.
And just to close out, I didn't give you an opportunity to do this, but if you would like to plug your podcast on Taylor Swift, where can listeners give it a listen?
Thank you very much. So it's called What Are Taylor Swift Studies Anyways? And you can find it on all the major streaming platforms, so Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff. If you just Google it, it's there. I am from Honduras, and Spanish is my first language. And so because I phrased it as a question, I did the Spanish question marks at the beginning and at the end. But if you Google it, even without the question marks, just What Are Taylor Swift Studies Anyways, you should be able to find it. And that's a little thing that's weird at the beginning.
Give Ari's podcast a listen. Also enroll in the course if you're running it again.
Yeah.
Ari, I appreciate you coming on and joining me today. It was great learning about your experience and hearing about all the cool things you do here at Quinnipiac.
Oh, thank you so much. It was so fun to be here, and I'm excited to listen to this again.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to find other episodes on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube podcasts. Check out Ari's there as well. Until next time, when I ask my next guest, who are you? I'm Joel Vanner. Bye for now.